And yeah, I don't know, a few months ago, a few weeks, yeah, a couple months ago, she was telling me a story about helping my son, who is 4.5 here at the preschool with his literacy. She is not one of his teachers, but she pushes in to the pre-K TK class to work on literacy with the students. And yeah, and she was telling me a funny story about him not wanting to do his letters, one day, and it sparked this idea of, hey, would you want to present at the 11th annual conference, especially as we are adding in literacy TPEs to many of the courses. And so I thought would be a great fit. I've never been have asked one of my teachers here at the preschool to present, so I'm super excited about this. So welcome, Scarlett.
Thank you. So everybody, I'm unfortunately a little bit sick. So Melissa's going to be helping me with a lot of the talking. But when Melissa approached me to speak, to be honest, I was a little bit nervous and a little terrified, but felt so honored and was really excited at the opportunity to share the passion that I've developed for literacy and teaching that in our early childhood setting.
Yeah, so yesterday we were at work together and she was like, bad news, Melissa, I lost my voice. And I was like, don't worry, we got this. My students who know me well will hopefully be appreciative to hear my voice once again on this Saturday morning. But so we're going to act as co-presenters in this presentation. Um, this is all Scarlett's work. Like she said, in the last, she's always had a strong interest in literacy and just a knack for it that we've noticed here at our preschool. And this year, we're so lucky that she has hours that she's able to work with the TK class. She teaches the youngest students, the twos, here this year, and she's able to push in and support the TK class with their literacy because she's just so good at it. So we're really, really lucky that we have that. We're starting that this year, and we'll continue. All right, so all right. Can everybody see that okay? Okay, great. So thank you. As we start, before we start, we talked a little bit about Scarlett already, but today we're going to be talking about sparking a love for literacy and specifically thinking about the strategies for early learners ages 2 through 5. So again, her name is Scarlett Hernandez, and thank you again for joining us. This is a topic that she's very passionate about. A little bit about her experience. She's been in the early childhood field for just over 10 years now, working with children ages 2 through 5 in an inclusive classroom. Our school is a Reggio-inspired preschool with project-based curriculum and a focus on play-based learning. We also have a big nature component. She is an educator that is committed to cultivating a classroom environment that shapes confident, curious, and capable learners. To start, well, first, the workshop will be covering different ways of sparking joy and excitement for literacy in an inclusive classroom setting for ages children 2 to 5. Together, we'll discuss strategies for making literacy fun, engaging, and meaningful through play-based and age-appropriate activities. So first, before we get started, she wanted to invite you all to think back on your own personal experiences with literacy and thinking about when you first learned how to write your name and or, short words. What comes up for you? What do what are some of the memories that, come up? Feel free to put that into the chat, or you can even unmute yourself and share out.
I'll jump in here. Patience with my froggy voice. Um, but I wanted to share a little bit about my own experience with literacy and the passion that sort of drives the reason for me wanting to make literacy so fun and engaging for these young children. When I was in school, and I think specifically back to my elementary school learning, literacy wasn't something that I found exciting. Literacy was something that was a chore. I disliked having to write. I hated having to read. And I felt a lot of insecurities around it, where I was pointed out how sloppy my letters were. My mom used to say patas de araña. They're like spider legs, really long and really horrible, um, which has to do with her own shape, like learning of how schooling was taught in Mexico. Um, but also being behind in my reading level and every grade, just feeling terrible about literacy and not having learned a love for literacy until I was in adulthood and realized that I really enjoyed journaling, that I really enjoyed reading books. And when I began to teach in at Stretch, and we had this introduction of something called the Redwood Reader, where we would practice literacy for the pre-K class, I realized, oh my goodness, it doesn't have to be the terrible experience that I had as a kid. Like, we can make literacy so fun, so engaging. We can make them feel confident. We can make them feel excited to take on the literacy world ahead of them. I'm going to pause my little voice for a little bit.
Yeah, does anybody want to share about their experience, their memories? Give a moment if anyone's writing in the chat.
I can share. This is Laura.
Thanks,
Uh,
Laura.
yeah. Well, I both my parents were immigrants, and so there was a lot of pressure to be a reader and to write like perfectly and as early as possible. So it was kind of like I don't remember it like it was like trying to read at the very young age, two, three. Like it, my parents associated literacy with the earlier you can do it, the better it was and the more successful you'd become, which isn't the case now. I mean, which I can say is not the case, but it was a lot of pressure, mostly pressure and anxiety.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I also wanted to share that I also struggle with literacy. I remember I actually don't really remember when I started reading or writing. My mom used to help me, I remember, but yeah, I always had anxiety around that, and people making fun of me in class about not being able to read well. And yeah, I feel that it wasn't until I came here to this country and I was older, like I think the first time I read a whole book, I was like 25. And yeah, I found it so, like I started reading after that a lot. But when I have my daughter, I wanted to change that. And I remember reading books. We have like 200 books in my house, and I still keep them. Yeah, and I remember reading to her and how seeing how fast she learned after, and yeah, that's what
No,
I'm going to share.
thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks for sharing.
Um, so Harhi, sorry, don't know if I'm saying that correctly. This happens in middle school. Our class created our own books with our own stories and illustrations. It was fun. I really enjoyed reading books with illustrations. Yeah. Jamie says, I wasn't a fan of reading either, but in elementary school, the kinders would choose 3 short books to read with their reading buddy, the 5th graders. And that was something I looked forward to each week as a kinder and a 5th grader.
Oh, was that Jamie? Yeah.
Mhm.
Gonna kind of talk about that in a little bit about how like make it collaborative, make it so that students are helping each other and how much more excitement that brings into it. Thanks for sharing.
We have time for one more if anybody wants to jump in. Okay. If anyone wants to share a story later, feel free. Okay, let's see. Okay, so the value of early literacy, I think we're all here because we all share and we understand the value of early literacy, but Scarlett states, in these early years, we create, set, and build the foundation for lifelong learning. By establishing a genuine excitement and love for literacy, we support these young children in viewing themselves as courageous learners, ready to take on literacy learning in the years ahead. So I want to give you, she wants to give you all of this background to share and acknowledge how our life experiences shape and manifest in our teaching. Through her years of teaching, she's found that literacy learning can be fun, as she explained. And unlike her personal experiences, she's seen children get so excited about writing and reading. Literacy is all around us in so many ways: street signs, clothing, logos, books, storytelling, dialogue, and music. And as we know, children are taking all of that in, and it's so exciting that we get to be a part of it and helping them make sense of all that they're taking in. Because in these early years, we're helping our little ones build the foundation of lifelong learning. And throughout the classes that she's taught, she's seen children gain an incredible confidence in themselves as they play and explore literacy in fun, engaging, and meaningful ways. So here's an example from a 4.5-year-old child who drew and wrote what they thought tomatoes needed to grow. This drawing came from a project focused on gardening and constructing a community garden for our school. So maybe you can kind of decipher what she wrote. Willow wrote, "Sun makes the tomato turn red." This is pulled from what we call our readers. We have different classes, they're all named after trees. So this one was the redwood reader. We also have the sequoia reader, and it is something that the children do in their last year, so in the pre-K TK year, where they collaborate together to create kind of like a newspaper where there's editors that get to choose the topic, and then the children each have their own page related to that topic within the reader. So this reader was about gardening or something related to gardening, right, Scarlett?
Yeah, so this year we had been focusing on how to make a community garden at our school. So every topic that year was centered around one aspect of that. So we had a gardening committee, we had the wall garden committee, a step stool committee, and for this one we were trying to figure out how can we make sure that our tomatoes grow and not die, because that's an experience that had happened to us the year prior.
Yeah, so then each child gets to choose what they want to write, as long as it's related to the topic. They have full agency, autonomy over, the sentence that they write, the drawing that they want to create. And then the teachers are able to work with them in small groups to be able to meet each child's, differences in where they're at with their literacy and language learning. So for this child, Willa, she is already doing, you can see, she's learning how to, inventive spelling, sorry. So she's already trying to figure out how to spell turn. And so in this moment, Scarlett's not, correcting her. She's letting her do her inventive spelling because that's where she's at in her literacy development. So this is a Reggio Emilia quote. Children as human beings possess 100 languages, 100 ways of thinking, expressing, understanding, of encountering otherness through a way of thinking that weaves together and does not separate the various dimensions of experience. The 100 languages are a metaphor for the extraordinary potentials of children, their knowledge building and creative processes. The myriad forms with which life is manifested and knowledge is constructed. It is the responsibility of the infant toddler center and the preschool to valorize all verbal and nonverbal languages with equal dignity. So she shares this quote because the idea of children posing 100 languages, which is a common phrase in Reggio schools, is something she always keeps in mind when thinking about classroom invitations or provocations that she's making available to the children, taking time to consider the type of learners that she has in her classroom. So literacy for all learners consider the learners in your classroom. You know your students, their personal interests, and the activities that they enjoy. This knowledge can help you to craft activities that will make literacy accessible for all learners. So when you think and consider the type of learners you have in your classroom, for example, kinesthetic, hands-on, verbal, auditory, etc., you can then create activities or experiences and we as the teachers predict will capture their interest and meet their developmental needs. She does say predict because, well, as we know, children constantly surprise us. And so, you can do your best to predict how they're going to interact with the activities, but it's not always for sure. If you teach in a classroom or around children, often you know that sometimes you can have a plan, think that the kids will love it, and then the activity misses the mark. And then when she thinks of different types of learners, she has some examples. So tactile learners who like to use their hands and feel things. She has some ideas of using sand or clay, shaving cream to write the letters in. You can use big, heavy logs to build letters. That way they're using their bodies to create these letters rather than just what we think of as putting pen to paper. Visual learners, you can use magnetic letters, letter bingo, labeling the environment, so having things up in the environment. Auditory learners, you can sing songs, as we all do, sound games to point to the object that makes the b sound for B, for example. We'll go into, she has like lots of pictures for these examples, so this is just giving you an overview. By creating an environment that supports a well-rounded approach for all learners, you discover which activities your students find engaging. So, those times that you're missing the mark, that's good information for you as a teacher to know, like, oh, wait, this child needs a little bit more, or we need to do something different. And sparking this genuine joy supports these young children in viewing themselves as, like she said before, courageous learners. We know schooling just gets trickier as years go on, and by sparking this interest in the early years, she truly believes that we are helping these little ones become confident learners who can take risks in their learning. And then, we think maybe you're all thinking, what about the children who don't easily come and sit down to do their letters, or who are not interested in doing their letters? And she wanted to share an example of a few children that she helped with. So for example, one child, Anderson, who really struggled at the beginning of his TK year, who didn't want to come and sit down and sign his name, or didn't want to do the Redwood Reader. And so she worked with him slowly in making it like not a task that he had to do, but really working on finding ways that could get him engaged. And so what she did was starting with, having other things there nearby during their small group for him to take breaks. So working on the Redwood Reader for a little bit, and then offering breaks to him, saying like, do you feel like you can do one more letter, or do you think you need to go take a break with like Legos over there or Magnetiles? So reading his cues in his ability to stay longer and pushing him a little bit, but not too much. And then another child, my son, who I started out with our morning together, sharing about, who would rather be running or moving his body, or building with Legos, or playing with his friends. Definitely not interested in his letters. And she has been working on his letters with him by bringing in a peer that he looks up to, who knows all of her letters. This one girl, Charlie in particular, who she pairs them together to work on the reader. And then he's able to learn from a peer, rather than feeling like, oh, my teacher has like this agenda and she's making me do my letters, and she makes it more collaborative and fun that way. Am I missing anything, Scarlett?
No, I think you got it all. Thank you.
Cool, great. Okay, so getting into some of the examples, the like concrete strategies and ideas that hopefully you can walk away with this presentation with. So literacy for 2 to 3 year olds. Children begin, here are some pictures. Let me move my thing because I can't read it. So they start to, some of the developmental domains, they start to begin to recognize that print carries meaning, so that they understand like, oh, wow, print is important. They also are building their own sense of self and identity. So everything relates back to themselves, right? And then when they put the two together, then that equals joy. So for children at this age who are building their sense of self, coming to school typically for the first time is a great starting point for them. When we introduce letters to them, we begin by connecting the letter to a child's sense of self, which is their name. This is where the first skills of letter identification begin. As the children begin to understand symbolic play, they learn that objects can represent letters, and that letters can represent people. They also get to work on their fine motor skills. So in this example, she's sharing they're putting Play-Doh on the letters of their name. So on a big like 8x10, you can see Marlo here. Sorry, I have like lots of little. I can't move our faces. Whoops. You can see Marlo here, and then Scout here in the middle, putting Play-Doh on her S, and then Lucette here with the L, putting the L there. Okay. And of course, interrupt me at any time, Scarlett, if I'm forgetting something.
Yeah, thank you. You're doing amazing.
Okay, great. Okay, so handwriting without tears, maybe some of you have heard of this. This is something that we use and adapt in our classrooms based on the age. We don't follow it exactly the way that Handwriting Without Tears explains, because we kind of adapt it to our program. But it's a great tool if you're interested. I would check it out. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I thought I heard somebody unmute themselves. So when Scarlett or when our teachers are using this tool, they like to, talk through the lines that they're seeing and the different types of lines that they're seeing. So really breaking down just even the shapes of the letters. So for example, you're looking for the shapes to make the letter T. To make the letter T, we will need a long piece that goes straight up and a smaller piece that goes across at the top like a roof. In the picture on the left, her co-teacher and her had created their own letter shapes that they laminated for the children. And so this is just one of the many ways that you can present letters to your class. And this really, for the twos, they really need ways that they're using their hands, they're playing, it's fun, and it's really hands-on. More with the twos and the threes. Here we see a 2-year-old using letter magnets to find and match the letters in her name tag. Name tags are a tool that we utilize in various ways. So we fold them into different activities throughout the day, using them, for example, using them for children to find at circle time, or having them as an aid if older children, need to sign in for the day. Sign in, when we say sign in, it just means that we have like a sign-in book and the children sign their name every day, and we present it as like, well, your parents have to, or your grown-ups have to sign you in for the day to know that you're here at school. And then also the children have to sign in for the day. And it's a great way for teachers to track the children's learning and their development in their letter formation and all of that.
Right. Nancy, like, wanted to jump in on that. Because the sign-in book, we'll keep it all in one notebook, and throughout the year, it's also like a great tool for visually, like parent-teacher conferences. I'm thinking about specifically for you to see back, where did we start with a child in September, and where are we in April? And you really get to see the gradual difference of just how much space a child maybe needs for writing. When they begin to write their names at first in this sign-in book, you're giving them ample room because they're doing a lot bigger movement with their handwriting, like that kind of self-control that they need for their hand isn't as mastered. That's something that we start to provide maybe in their last year, their pre-K year, where we're giving them smaller space, still not like a rule-sized paper where we're expecting them to write their name in that, because we have to keep it age appropriate and know that children are not going to be able to do that when they're 5. So we're creating our own lines based on like how each child and their skill level is at. So always keeping in mind what is each individual's child's skill level, and making sure that we're not pushing beyond that when we know that they're not there yet. But if we're seeing that they're able to, maybe challenging them a little bit.
Yeah. And usually we do the sign-in book. Typically we start the sign-in book in their 2nd year of preschool. So they're about 3.5. We don't do it in our twos class. All right, so literacy with 3 to 3.5-year-olds. In the previous slide, we used magnetic letters in Play-Doh for those younger twos who love to make prints. That was a great activity. Here we have the name tags of all the children available for friends to attempt spelling. So while supporting a child in this activity, Scarlett takes the opportunity to point out to a child the letter that they share with their friends. This makes the activity meaningful since friendships are so vital to them, especially when they're, in their 2nd year of preschool. And the love that they have for each other extends into their excitement for learning about who shares a letter of, their names. And we call that, when somebody has a similarity with another person, we have a heart connection with them. So, here it's like Philippa and Honorata both have A's in their name. And so they're excited to say like, oh, you have an A, I have an A, heart connection. And then that leads to making it collaborative and connective. So seizing any opportunity you have to make learning amongst peers collaborative. The child in the pink here in this picture was attempting to spell one of her friend's names. She was having a hard time finding the letter N. And teacher Scarlett could have easily pointed to it saying like, oh, here's the letter N. But instead, she took the moment to say, your friend has the letter N in his name. Maybe he can help us. Calling him over, she then added, we need a little help. Could you help us? Your friend is trying to find the letter N. Maybe you can help with that. And the child in the green, Nico, beamed with pride saying, yes, I know N. It's in my name. It's right there. So even though Nico wasn't originally there, Scarlett called him over to help Chloe find the letter N. So that made it more fun, more collaborative, and more connective. Very quickly, you'll start to see how excited young children get about early literacy. So the photo on the left is the writing center with the names of the child in red and their parent in black ink so they can write it into their art. So because this class, they really wanted to write and send art home for their parents. So Scarlett figured like they know the letters, they know their names, so let's add their parents' name to that too. In the next picture, you can see loose parts to create letters with beads, gems, rocks, beans, and pebbles. So that's just another fun way to add some tactile and also creativity. And then in the top right, they incorporated literacy into the dramatic play area, asking what food they're making and drawing out of the ingredients and spelling them so children can incorporate that into their play.
And to chime in on that, so that's something that we would do during circle time sometimes with my co-teacher. It's like, oh, what are we gonna play in the like the kitchen area today? This was a class that was really into dramatic play, so we would see a lot of the children in that space making food or saying that they were gonna go grocery shopping, and we would use their own ideas to write these out in the moment with them at circle time, and then that way we were setting it up for them as they moved into choice time. So they would go into the area knowing like, oh, we came up with these ideas, these come from us, and now we're going to go and extend our play that way.
Yeah, that's great. And then the bottom, oh, did I get it wrong, Scarlett? The bottom left is having mark making tools accessible across different spaces of the school. The children in this photo are playing in the backyard, and they would regularly have small notebooks or clipboards available to them to extend their literacy interest and play.
Yeah, so you always like what's something that we always try to create at our center is making sure we always have a writing center, making sure we always have writing tools available for the children that they can just pull off if an idea gets sparked by them. So we were noticing that this same type of play was continuing outside, but because it was our backyard, we weren't naturally thinking at first like we should have notebooks or we should have paper. But when we started to see that interest in the children, we thought, okay, it's time for us to make a change to our backyard space. We need to make sure that we always have clipboards available to them, always have little mini notebooks available to them so that if they are driven again to write coffee because they're working at the coffee shop. I think that's what was happening here, that little in the right hand corner with the green stripe machine. It was to make like beverages. So they were making coffee, and the two girls were attempting to spell out how to sound out the word coffee. Um, and yeah, I think it's like noticing a lot, like their interest and seeing, oh, okay, there's something missing that we can make available for them to extend that play further.
Awesome. Okay, and Scarlett, so nice. She wanted to give you a warning for the next picture is with a snake. Um, she always warns me anytime the snake is coming out or like to eat or whatever.
I personally love the snake, but she's a class pet, or school pet more, because she's in different classrooms over the last few years. And I have learned that not everyone is as welcoming about snakes. So I always like to give a heads up, like it will be a snake picture in this email. So look out. The next slide does have a picture of a snake. I think she's really cute though.
Yeah, she's growing on me. Okay, let's see. So the previous photos showed meaningful ways of incorporating literacy into children's play. So grocery lists to add to their games, learning their letters with Play-Doh, collaborating with friends to learn new letters, writing the names of their parents, siblings, grandparents, grown-ups in their lives. Here's a picture of our school pet, Sandy. She is an Okatee corn snake. These snakes are pretty docile and easy pets. And the next series of photos will be about a class that Scarlett stayed with for 3 years. So when they were in their 2s and their 3s, and then in their last year of preschool. So we do looping at our school when we are able to, or when the teachers are able to. So we're really lucky. Scarlett stayed with this one class for 3 years. And the project work started out in their second year here at Stretch in wanting to figure out or like investigate how food can connect us as a community. So learning about all the different children's food that they ate at home and with their families, and then bringing that back into the classroom as an opportunity to learn about each other and create a stronger community. And then it morphed into in their last year, because if you're taking my curriculum class, we talk about projects spanning over multiple weeks, sometimes months. Our project work here at Stretch can span over the year. Typically it's a year, and it's a journey that goes many different ways. And sometimes it can even travel or continue into the next year. So Scarlett, because she's a rock star at curriculum, was able to continue with this project work. And in their last year in the pre-K class, they created a restaurant. And it started out by investigating and researching different restaurants here near our school, both through just building community and getting to know the restaurants nearby and the neighbors, and then also through our parent community who had, connections or people that they knew that worked in restaurants and would visit those in those restaurants. We started out with the year researching how restaurants really work, and then they created their own class restaurant, which am I skipping ahead?
No, I think that's like a good overview of it. And it was also like being a researcher and noticing in their play that they were doing a lot of dramatic play where they would say, like, come to my restaurant and tell each other, like, what do you want to order? Uh, and that kind of made my co-teacher and I think like, oh, we could get them to make menus and that could go into their play. But we wanted them to be able to see what a menu could look like and the different aspects to it. So we went on a neighborhood walk to collect menus from the local restaurants near our school, and thus began the, I think, more driven interest of like, we really need to make a restaurant that we can share with our friends and our family. And
Yeah,
that's what you see here.
yeah. And then they named the whole, back to the Sandy, is they one child had the idea of like, when they were discussing what should they name their restaurant, because they're so connected to Sandy in their classroom. They had had Sandy for 2 years. They wanted to name it Sandy.
They had known Sandy since they were 2.
Yeah.
At this point, they're 4. And we were talking like, what could be some ideas for the restaurant? What do you think it should be? And a child, in a very just like, duh, we're missing the very like clear option. It should be the Sandy restaurant because Sandy is a part of our class. And all of us are, nodding in agreement. You're right. That makes total sense.
Yeah, so going a little deeper with the menus, for example, again, researching and looking at different types of menus and making it interactive. So, the teachers didn't just simply like print out menus from, Google. They went out and went to the restaurants nearby to ask for menus. And luckily we live, in a area where there's a good amount of restaurants and cafes nearby, to bring back in for the children to really study and investigate. Then they made their own menu, which was used in the dramatic play area, and they were able to, revise and revisit this menu in the dramatic play area over time. So it was, again, being the children had a voice and they had, they had agency and like, wait, we need to change the menu. We're not serving this anymore in the dramatic play. Materials were always available for them to make new ones, and then to add to their existing menu, so that again, they, knew that they could say like, oh, I need to go over there and get the markers, that markers were accessible to them so that they could add to themselves, rather than feeling like they had the teacher kind of controlled all of that. They had the agency to make that change. And then all of this led to them really wanting to truly make a restaurant I think they wanted to make a restaurant for their parents and families first.
Their big goal was they wanted to make the restaurant for all the teachers, all the classes in our school, all the classes in our school's relatives, their family, their extended family, and anybody else in the community that wanted to come. But we were a little pressed for time and we had to downscale it since there was only like 2 months left of school.
Yes. So they got to work. They created Save the Dates, which, all of these activities incorporated literacy. They emailed their families asking what kind of food they would want to eat. So Scarlett and her co-teacher would bring a small group into another room and bring out the computer and have the children help type. Like, the children were the ones typing the letters with the help of the teachers. They made new menus. They prepared invitations for their families. They created signs. They drew decorations, and so much more. Did I skip something? No. Okay. So deeply connected and motivated, the children worked hard to create the menus and invites for the families, for their families and friends. When we told them how many invites that there would be, that they were not deterred. So this was a class of 13? Yeah, 13. So,
Sorry,
imagine.
I realized I wasn't unmuted. 13.
Yeah. So imagine, that's 50 plus if you're thinking about parents and siblings and grandparents. And they were determined to write every single invitation. And Nico, who
He's to my left.
yeah, he's sitting down holding something next to the child raising his hand. So Nico was a child who the teachers were supporting with, his social interactions. He had like some support needs with, different, just I'll keep it simple, different behavioral challenges. And he was extremely motivated by this project. And it was really an opportunity for him to feel successful in the class, because a lot of times, he knew he was struggling a bit. And so he really was able to shine in this, where he was like, I will, if we don't have time in class, I will bring the invitations home and work on them at home. We've got to get all of this done. And so it was a really great opportunity to see, a child who might be struggling in other areas of the classroom be able to become motivated by something like this. Luckily, in this moment, Scarlett shared that there is such a thing as a scanner and a printer. And so that was utilized to make all the invitations.
But we loved the enthusiasm, and we loved how that rallied other kids to be like, I guess I could take some home too and do them after my bath or do them before dinner.
Yeah. So this project came from years of building a foundation where mark making and literacy were always presented to them in an age appropriate and fun way. And it really, you could see by their last year of preschool just how much that that foundation had a lasting impact. They played a lot of games throughout their days. They used transitions to spell things out. So, snack time, instead of just saying snack, they would spell it out so the children could kind of, learn how to decipher.
Sometimes when we would call kids to form a line, we might say like, okay, we're going to play a guessing game. Come on up if your last name starts with the letter W, like the letter W that makes the W sound, Winterson. And then they'd be like, that's me. So we were always incorporating literacy into small moments, whether we were waiting for the restroom, getting in line to go to snack, lining up to head into the building. We were finding any opportunity where we could incorporate a game for us to play.
She had children go from saying, but I don't even know how to write my letter, to I'm really good at writing letters, and so that just, feels so fulfilling after all Scarlett's hard work. And she feels honored that she can help children view literacy as something that they truly are experts in, and setting a foundation of confidence and sparking a genuine love for learning. So we have just over 10 minutes. I'm gonna stop sharing. Well, let me read these questions first. Some reflection questions. How does this presentation, or how we approach literacy here at Stretch, compare to your current classroom? In what ways is this similar or different? What thoughts or insights did this bring up for you? And how could you incorporate some of these strategies into your classroom environments to support early literacy? And of course, if you, are not working in the classroom right now, you can still think of maybe your future classroom, or anything that applies to you that feels meaningful.
I also went ahead and shared the questions in the chat for everyone.
Great. And I'm just gonna, I think we have enough people. I'm gonna do a quick breakout room. Let's see. We'll do we'll do 3 breakout rooms. There'll be about 5 people in each room. Scarlett and I will just hang back. So copy these questions, take a screenshot, whatever you want to do, and we'll come back together at 10:12 so that we can just hear back from each group. So please designate somebody in your group to be the spokesperson. Just 1 or 2 things that you all talked about. So 10:12, so just like 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thank
Talk
you.
a lot about that.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't talk too much about like the don'ts of literacy, but we talked more about the do's of literacy, but I think discouraging and criticizing, right, is going to lead to shutdown, definitely. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, definitely always want to be in the encouraging lens of things. And, um, like you said, sometimes you don't know what words they're writing. But that's definitely happened to me. And just asking them to, like, wait, tell me again. And then maybe making a note at the bottom for yourself, so that you're celebrating their efforts and you're celebrating their words.
Who's next?
I was in the second group and we were discussing how we get so boxed into the idea of like what learning like literacy and all that is. And I was thinking a lot of times it's just like through book reading and through teaching them how to hold like a pencil or a pen. And this not only like helps them learn but also hits like all the DRDP measurements too with it. So we were just like discussing different like ideas we had to incorporate in our classrooms. And I believe Laura mentioned like about like wooden blocks, right?
Mm.
For the letters.
Yeah, the handwriting without tears, we had that in art classroom, and I just mentioned that I hadn't seen it done on the floor. We actually did it on tables, but when they were next to each other, they would start hitting each other with the pieces of wood. So I just thought that seeing it on the floor, it looks like a lot better format. So I just noticed that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I mean, I definitely, when I reflect back to like when I first started teaching, I also feel like I had a very narrow-minded view, what felt like to me of literacy, of it's just reading a book, it's just giving them a pencil and teaching them the way you have to hold it, and then that you have to stay in the lines, and it's writing the same word over and over again. I feel like I remember doing that in elementary, writing the same sentence again and again because that was practice, that I don't feel was actually helpful practice at all. And instead, incorporating Play-Doh or blocks or games, like letter bingo, it just makes it so much more well-rounded and so much more exciting.
Right, last group. Going over a few minutes, sorry.
I can speak for our group. We were talking about how we thought that it was cool to share the like ways you can engage literacy from outside like sources like restaurants. I thought that was really cool and it makes you like kind of think like creatively, how can I like listen to these kids' interests and make it more of a like fun activity to where they want to engage rather than like something they just have to sit and work through and like that will just like kind of discourage them. But yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Carla. Well, any last questions? Scarlett and I are happy to hang out, but want to recognize that this is a break time and then you'll be getting back on the main Zoom room for the keynote speaker at 10:30. So thank you. Thank you, Scarlett, for making
Thank
it
you so
work.
much. And thank you, Melissa, for being my voice today.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. We'll hang out for a couple minutes if anyone has questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming.